We're so excited about our podcast this week. We're coming to you live from the CES show floor, right in the main lobby. We're going to be talking with leading journalists about the exciting trends and products we're seeing all over CES. So be sure to download our episodes on January 9th, 10th, and 11th to hear firsthand about the future of technology, what it'll look like, and what we're seeing all over CES. Enjoy today's episode, live from Las Vegas.
All right. Hi, guys. Thank you. Welcome to the CTA stage. We are very excited to be here on day one of CES 2018. Fun fact, for those of you that don't know, this is our 40th year being in the city of Las Vegas. And this is the first day that they've had rain in 4 months. So it's really kicking off to a great start. But we're hoping it's like a wedding, where it rains on your wedding day, it brings you good luck. It's raining on day one of CES, so we know it's going to be an outstanding show. I'm Allie Freed, Director of Global Communications for CTA. So I have the honor and privilege of working with the media that come to the show. We have more than 7,000 journalists that come to cover all of the hot products, all the hot trends, all the hot technologies coming out of CES. And a very select few get to be media partners of the show, and I am so happy to be on stage with 4 representatives from our media partners that we are just thrilled to work with. So I'm going to have them go down the line, introduce themselves, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to dive and talk to them about what they've seen at the show, what they want to see, and we'll take it from there. So Jeremy, start us off.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeremy Kaplan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Digital Trends. 40th year that the show is here in Detroit, but I've been coming for 50 years. It's astounding. I don't know how I've managed it.
Benjamin Button.
Very excited to be here.
Hi, Jerry Beilinson from Consumer Reports. I run the technology coverage for Consumer Reports. And yes, it seems like I've been here 40 years, but I think I'd leave sometime. So,
John Falcone, executive editor at CNET.com. This is my 15th CES in a row, and I could swear one year we were here and it was slushy snow outside, so it could be worse.
You're right.
Hi, everybody. My name's Andrew Soergel. I'm an economics reporter at U.S. News and World Report. This is my first CES, so I'm really taking it all in. I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Welcome. We're expecting
it's
more.
Like Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome. We're glad to have you.
We hope to see you again every year for the next 50 years. All right, so today's day one of the show, but media events actually kicked off 2 days ago with exhibitor press conferences, our unveiled events. I wanted to dive in and see if you guys were able to attend Media Days 1 and 2 unveiled, and see if anything stood out for me particularly from those 2 days, which are typically days that a lot of our exhibitors make product announcements before the open of the show doors.
well, yeah, sure, I can start. The thing so I did go to the media events yesterday, the press conferences. The thing that was most striking to me after having sat through many of them in the past is that LG and Samsung, which are kind of the biggest ones that people really wait in line to get into, didn't introduce any product. They barely talk about products. The entire LG press conference especially was entirely about AI and their connected products. And Samsung too, there were TVs. I've never been to a Samsung press conference where they didn't talk about TV tech. But they had TVs, they had refrigerators, but the entire presentation in both those cases was about how smart, connected homes were going to integrate their products. It was really, even more than last year, it's kind of the digital assistant and like AI show.
Did you guys feel the same way? Anyone else have a comment there?
I totally agree, and I thought it was interesting that they went back to the AI terminology too, whereas for the past few years it was sort of like AI is a misnomer that doesn't really exist. It's really all machine learning, and yesterday especially it was AI. It's going to infuse all our products. It's going to inform everything we do. And I also feel like they were in some ways kind of kicking the can to 2020 and saying like we're lining everything up in the cloud and everything else, but for these devices to really start talking to each other, it's going to be a little bit over the horizon, maybe. To your earlier point about the unveiled events and other things like that, I can't think of any specific examples, but there's definitely been an increase of health wearables and things like that. So not from the big companies, but from small ones. I think the company was Omron, had a wearable that's an actual blood pressure monitor, I think, which is something we haven't seen before. As these devices actually move to a point where they can get FDA cleared, if not FDA approved, that could be a game changer as they go to the big time.
Can I jump back on the AI trend? You're right. It is interesting the way that LG and Samsung were focused more on AI than on products. I spent a long time watching the NVIDIA press conference last night, which was on the one hand sort of a snoozer. If you watched it, it was incredibly dry and incredibly boring, and megaflops and gigaflops and petaflops, blah 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 blah. It was just horrible. Half of it was about AI and the power of AI to do this and to do that. Last year, everyone was very swept up by the Alexa news, and Alexa dominated the conversation. Alexa, of course, being a form of AI. Again, I think we're going to see that. Here's my prediction. As you walk around the floor over the next couple of days, you're going to see nothing but conversations about AI, whether it's cars or dishwashers or laptops or smart home, this and that. It's going to be all AI. And that's what NVIDIA was talking about. That's what LG was pushing. That's the trend that's going to be picked up this year.
I think another thing that we've seen, and we were just talking about this before we came out here, is the number of partnerships that have been announced in the last 2 days. Ford is partnering with Postmates, which I'm thrilled about. The idea of an automated delivery system, bringing me my food order. So at 11 p.m. if I'm ordering a pizza, I don't have to feel judged by person, right? So that's great. But yeah, we've had Verizon and Samsung. It's been really interesting. Some of the more news headline grabbers have been, I think, the partnerships so far.
Excellent. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is like a really also very obvious thing, but the extent to which this is the Google show. So last year this was like the Amazon show. Amazon barely makes any hard goods. Google barely makes any products, but it's a show about Google versus Amazon. It's really remarkable. So the ecosystem battle, which has been going on and kind of gathering steam, is really taking off. I also thought one of the interesting things this year, Alexa was so far ahead last year that it seemed like, while everybody else was playing catch up. But it's really changed fast. When LG went with the Google platform for smart TVs, suddenly, that's like leapfrogging the little echoes. This is like people's TVs from LG are running on Google. So I just think that is, really fascinating. We're in the midst of what's essentially a big format war that I think maybe is not quite as obvious to people buying this stuff, but in Silicon Valley, it's death match. They're really invested in it.
With the same financial ramifications. It's $1 trillion format war. You're exactly right.
And Google certainly made an investment in their visual presence here at CES. If you've seen the monorail out there, completely wrapped in Google. They've got a slide outdoors. They've got a ball pit. So they are really, really making themselves known.
Why do they do that? Like, who are they advertising to? Like
every single person with eyeballs.
Yeah, I get it. I also think sometimes they have so much money that everything costs nothing. Like, oh, okay, well, yeah, why not? We'll just do that. But, I just don't understand some of the branding sometimes too.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah. So obviously the story behind AI is data, and we heard big data stories out of Intel's keynote last night. It was on the floor with Ford this morning in their keynote. Any thoughts on data in general and where that's going to take us and what we can do with it? Jeremy.
That's interesting. You're right. It is all about data, and I think on the backside of the announcements, there is this underlying story. But what I've been hearing hasn't been so much about the data as about the applications thereof. So it's your car is going to do this or that, your fridge is going to do this or that. And meanwhile, of course, in here, LG's got fridges that are AI powered all of a sudden, and dishwashers that are AI powered, and they're not saying to you that we're collecting data on how often you're washing your underwear, but that is the backstory for sure.
It's a human experience powered by data. All right, excellent. Andrew, question for you. When you come to a show like this as an economist, what are you looking for? What are you looking to...
So my main focus here is kind of the Smart Cities initiative, and I think it's huge that that's taking such a such a prominent role this year, and certainly that I think that plays into the data point here. I think one of the commonalities with a lot of the smart cities experts that are here, they talk about these cities are getting all this data, and we're really kind of right on the edge. Certainly, we already have Kansas City, Denver, San Francisco, even Columbus, Ohio. We have cities taking these initiatives, trying to better use all this data that's out there, and provide services for their citizens that make sense for them. I think especially with the rollout of 5G, which has been talked about quite a bit so far, I think we're really going to see a lot of really interesting things happen with smart cities, with those initiatives, autonomous vehicles. It's a really exciting time to be here, I think.
I mean, you said it there at the end. It's interesting to me that smart cities and 5G and autonomous vehicles too are kind of like three sides of the same triangle, where all that technology is oftentimes talked about separately, but really kind of all interdependent on each other. And it was really interesting. I think it was Toyota had that e-pallet vehicle they showed, which is sort of an autonomous little shuttle vehicle that takes you around a smart city, basically. And also, in some ways, a vehicle they're making that almost totally destroys their whole business model, where it's like, you don't need to own a car anymore. Just call the app and have this one thing come get you. So it's smart of them to do that, because you want to be the one that comes up with the innovation to put your whole line out of business.
And Smart Cities is a brand new area on the show floor this year, and it was floored based on everything that you guys have said. There's an absolute need to have it here. It's a conversation that's going. I know you had some issues with the fact that Smart Cities was coming to CES. Has your tune changed at all?
It's such a... I think about this. I know it's no longer the Consumer Electronics Show. It's CES, a place where we talk about technology. And of course, Smart Cities is all about technology. But to me, I come here, I'm looking for gadgets. I'm looking for consumer electronics. And it's the speakers, and it's the televisions, and the cars, et cetera. So to me, the whole Smart Cities thing is an initiative that municipalities are going to have conversations about who buys data and whether they buy them from this company in order to set up markers on the street that the cars can drive past. It's a fiscal, municipal government thing that just seems like a lot of dry conversation that I don't like being part of. I like to watch a TV, and I like to listen to to me, it's like, let's talk about all the fun stuff that we've got here, and not the who's buying data from who.
All right, I'll take it.
I have let me disagree. So
yes, please. Let's fight this one.
What's at CES in a sense. I don't. I'm agnostic on that. It's so huge. I'm never going to see half of it anyway. But one thing that I think is interesting about that is that those would have been separate conversations in the past, but now they're the same conversation, because the reason that there are going to be more chips in every car and we need 5G is so that my car talks to the traffic light and talks to the engineers and the people who are controlling the where the which way the bridge is flowing. So there's this big data is making. I mean, there's a privacy aspect to it too. But what big data is doing is supplying, hopefully for the greater good, planners with information that we're generating. And so, the nice shiny side of it is the city of the future. Also, there's significant privacy concern. How do we get those benefits while realizing that it's being fed by every interaction we have? And I think it's kind of this is something we're very interested in is privacy. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is that with services like Facebook, we always knew that if you're not paying for it, you are the product, not the customer. That's like a very typical thing. It's really becoming true in hard goods too. I bought the TV. A lot of the value of the TV to Samsung is that they are collecting my data. And that, it's just a very pervasive thing. We're kind of really changing our relationship with products, I think, to be somewhat more the way it has been with Google or Facebook for a long time.
Well, and I think swinging back to a point you made, especially with this data, this is still, I'm coming from Washington, and so kind of the dry, legalese, regulatory, that's a language that I'm familiar with. But this is still, in many cases, a regulatory nightmare trying to figure out, okay, autonomous vehicles. Let's take that as an example. In Michigan, the rules that govern the road may be different. If you cross state lines. If you drive over into Canada, I think a lot of the conversation, a lot of what I've been hearing so far is that there really need to be this conversation needs to extend beyond the technology sphere. It's encouraging. I know there are a lot of, I think the FTC commissioner is here today. Treasury Transportation Secretary Chow is coming tomorrow. I think that's encouraging because I think a lot of the conversations that we're having, a lot of things that we're seeing, it doesn't just end with us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have more than 170 elected or appointed officials coming to the show exactly for those reasons, to make sure that they're at the front of what's going on.
Everyone but Ajit Pai.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. But kind of in that smart cities vein and everything talking to each other and what's on the roads, we've seen the automotive story at CES just really, really quadruple and grow in the last few years. A lot of the Media Day events were hosted by major automotive companies. We've got 11 OEMs on site this year. Lots of talk about autonomous vehicles, lots of talk about all electric. Thoughts?
Yeah, I find this to be particularly fascinating. So as somebody that's come to this show year after year, many of you probably have done the same thing, you get to know that certain booths are in certain places. So Intel is always right over there, and LG's got a spot here, and Samsung's in the back over there. And what's interesting this year, if you go into the North Hall where all the car stuff is, it's completely turned around. There are only a handful of companies that are still in the same space that they were last year, because there's so much upheaval in this space. There was a company called Faraday Future, perhaps you heard of them. They were there, they are no longer there. Instead, there's a new company called Beilinson, which is now in there, and maybe they won't be here next year. It's very hard to tell. There's just so much change and upheaval that's going on. The other thing that I think is really fascinating, if you talk to one of the car companies about when we're going to see autonomous cars. So if you talk to Ford, for example, they'll say we're working on it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it'll be pervasive. And then 2 days ago, I had a drive in a Lyft autonomous vehicle, drove me around Las Vegas, and it works fine. It was flawless. It was just like being in any other taxi. So is autonomous this far-off future thing, or is it just around the corner? Because it kind of feels like a year from now, 2 years from now even, this might be a very commonplace thing.
I was also surprised. I kind of walked in, at least in the autos vein. The Detroit Auto Show is right around the corner here, and so I kind of expected a few. Okay, we're gonna show off this technology or that, but I wasn't expecting as many kind of concrete announcements as we've seen really in the past 2 days. I think that's great for CES. Ahead of such a big auto show.
And as a show organizer, I can let you know that as recent as 5 years ago, a lot of the auto companies said, well, we want to be at CES, we know that's the place we need to be, but all of our staff and all of our cars are in Detroit. Then we started saying, you know what, we're going to make it a priority to be at CES. And now it's almost like the announcements are being made here and then the follow-up is happening in Detroit. So thrilled to see that. And we actually did a little data analysis, and the automotive footprint at CES would make it the 5th largest standalone auto show in the United States, which is pretty incredible when you think about that. So just going to go ahead and pat myself on the back for that one. Clearly all my doing. All right, so we've talked smart cities, we've talked 5G, we've talked automotive. We have not.
Can we talk 5G? I don't want to steal your thunder. I would love to hear what these guys think about 5G.
Oh, maybe we just talked about it in my head because it was on my brain. Let's talk about 5G, the next generation of wireless. Is it what it's cracked up to be? And what are we going to get out of it?
I'm hoping it's half as good as the hype because, again, even at half of the hype, it sounds like a total game changer. I'm also optimistic that even, forget about mobile devices, even just the fixed wireless installations, so getting a little pizza box size antenna you could hang out your window and hook up to your home router. If that plays out, where I think AT&T is supposed to be in at least 5 cities by the end of this year with that technology, and Samsung's going to be making the hardware, that theoretically creates possible competition to cable TV and broadband internet access, with the exception it's probably going to be the same companies doing a lot of that. But the more competition we have in that space, the better. And if it's doing wirelessly, I feel like that does open up for more competition. And that, frankly, I think would really make that the whole net neutrality debate kind of become moot. Where as long as there's a lot more competition, one of the things they would compete on is giving you unfettered broadband access to everything, or at least that's my hope. I hope I'm not being too optimistic.
I like that. Andrew.
I guess I certainly have seen a lot of optimism. I mean, I agree. I certainly hope that this is half as good as what we're talking about here. I think now there's a timeline. End of 2018. We're talking, AT&T. We're talking Verizon. That seems really optimistic. The more I've heard, 2019, 2020. It's certainly not a decade away, but it's certainly not something that I think we're going to see in a widespread, kind of functional environment, really in the next probably year and a half.
Let me be the voice of pessimism here, because I don't think any of that is realistic at all, and I don't think we need it, and I think it's a massive boondoggle. I like what Qualcomm does. I don't feel like we have a need for this whatsoever. I feel like 4G. So you guys know 4G is LTE, right? Long-term evolution. Because the point is, 4G is supposed to keep on improving itself. And there are a lot of ways that they can build off the existing technology to make it better and better. The concept of 5G is replace all of that with something different, which doesn't go as far, and we'll need 10 times as many transmitters. And we're going to and to do all of the automotive stuff that they think they want to do, we need transmitters in every car and at every road sign, and 10 or 20 feet down the road, they need transmitters to get the signals across. And inside your apartment too, so you need transmitters in your house and in your building because it can't go through concrete. It's incredible the amount of infrastructure that will be required to do any of the stuff that they want with 5G. And meanwhile, I get 4G signals in my apartment pretty darn well, and they do a lot. And if we just doubled the bandwidth, it feels like Qualcomm in particular and all of these companies want other companies to spend several $1 trillion to buy their products. I don't think we need them.
Interesting. To put the speed in perspective, so on a 3G network, if you wanted to download a 2-hour movie, that would take you 26 hours. We're now into 4G. You want to download that same 2-hour movie, it will take you 6 minutes. Not bad at all. But on a 5G network, to download that same 2-hour movie, 3.6 seconds. Snap your finger and it's there. So the networks are 100 times more responsive, 100 times faster, 10 times more responsive.
And you can start streaming it in 1/10 of a millisecond.
Exactly.
So you don't need to download it at all. On 4G, I can get that same movie right this second.
Speaking of movies, let's talk about screens, TVs. LG has a rollable TV.
Yeah,
Let's talk
LG, one of the coolest things of the show is this rollable OLED display. Literally rolls up like a poster, basically, and rolls back down into a tiny container at the bottom. They showed this technology last year, but it was only like 16 inches or something and not high resolution. This is 65 inches 4K display. Really amazing. It's from LG Display, which is kind of LG's sister company. Suffice to say, you won't have that in Best Buy by the end of the year, but that's a really interesting kind of prototype and proof of concept. Samsung not staying still with that sort of challenge. They've showed really big improvements in their quantum dot QLED LED screens. And the coolest thing, I think, over in their booth is the thing they're calling the Wall, which is a giant micro LED display. So that's a new technology. Again, they had showed a hint of that last year, but it's almost like a Times Square billboard in your home. And that's, again, not really a consumer technology yet. It's for giant displays. But it's just really cool to see that. To me, TVs have always been the bread and butter of CES, and some years there's exciting stuff, some years it's a little lamer. This seems like it's reinvigorated the excitement in the display space. I also like all of the short throw projectors we're seeing, which is, so instead of having like a movie theater where projectors in the back projecting to the front, this is sort of right on a credenza on front of a wall. You just put the unit there and it goes straight up pretty much. So you still need a dark room, of course, but it's a lot fewer wires and a much cooler technology, I think.
Yeah, and TVs, I was just going to say the wall is really, really cool. For consumers, I don't know if we'll ever have the modular thing where you put together different panels and create the TV you want. You might.
Right, yeah.
But micro LED on its own, they're really two separate things, is really cool because, you know, in our testing, OLEDs usually come out well, they always come out at the very top of our testing, mainly because they can get to completely dark black levels because each pixel generates its own light. With micro LED, you know, that's having a technology that's not OLED that does almost the same thing or comes very, very close. So, you know, having more opportunities to have companies competing to get that kind of a level of performance is good. That'll be good for consumers. There'll be more choices. Prices could come down. And it's also particularly important if you're going to really be able to do a good job with like HDR and the newer really kind of cool content coming out. So I think that's a really, you know, a really neat thing. And I'm also hoping that more companies will introduce OLEDs into the U.S. Every year I see a couple of companies showing OLEDs that are only sold in Asia, and they always say that by Q3 we're probably going to have a U.S. distributor. And they normally don't, but it happened again today though, so I'm optimistic that there will be more players and there won't have to be such a very high end. The prices are coming down anyway, but so it won't be so exclusive.
All right, well, I've been given the 3-minute warning, so I want to end by going down the line with the thing that you have been most excited to see so far, or what you are most excited to see during the next week.
There are a lot of fun gadgets that we see here. There's one that I am particularly excited to hear what our reviewer has to say about it. I forget the name of it, but it's a pillow. Okay. It's a little bean-shaped pillow, and it's got a little motor inside of it, and you turn it on, and it breathes. It just pulses slowly and steadily. It also makes kind of a little purring sound, kind of like a kitten. The idea being you curl up with it and you sleep with the thing, and it'll soothe you and rock you to sleep.
Is that the Somnox? Was that the name of the company? Somnox?
That might be it. Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah. It looks wild. It really does.
We have a guy sleeping with it right now.
Is he sleeping with it all week?
It is Vegas, what it says, and all that. Yeah.
But I can see that self-soothing, like babies, their heart rates respond to whoever's holding them, heart rate, breathing patterns.
It's remarkably expensive is the only problem.
I'm sure it'll drop down. All right, Jerry.
I think this is less a thing than an idea. The autonomous cars and a lot of other stuff like that are often looked at as just gee-whiz and really cool. But for adaptive technology, for people with disabilities or for the elderly, I think we're getting to the point where they're really on the verge of being very empowered by these things. Often, I've spent a lot of time with car riders, and often they look at autonomous cars in this sort of dystopian way, like, oh no, I want my McLaren. I don't really want an autonomous. But it's not for you. It's for people who aren't really able to drive on their own. And with both autonomous cars and also a lot of connected home stuff, I think we're just getting to the point that it's going to be really transformative for people who really need those products. And probably the car thing might be the most important one because of the number of people who are really kind of waiting at home for their ride to get there.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Great point. John?
I would say two things. I would reiterate, if you're here on the floor, definitely go check out the LG OLED Canyon, which is super cool. And its competitor, Samsung, has that wall micro LED display. They're both, I think, two of the coolest things over there. We have seen a lot of robots at this show. They're still one of those things that's also sort of over the horizon and not really here yet. That being said, next door at the Renaissance Hotel, they apparently do have the, I think it's relay robots, and they're named Priscilla and Elvis, and they're zipping around there like delivering toothpaste to people's room and stuff. So that's actually pretty cool.
That's incredible. All right, Andrew, as our first timer.
Okay. I've been most encouraged, I think, to hear the amount of thought that's being put into, we have all this data, we have all these smart devices. It sounds like there's a lot of thought and a lot of conversation around using this responsibly. and really, kind of understanding, okay, if this device is going to be watching me all the time, is going to know where I am, how do we mitigate risk there? How do we, ensure that this is a device that puts the consumer first and, isn't... There seems to be quite a bit of thought into trying to identify problems that are not immediately apparent, and I think that's encouraging, because there's a lot of great technology here, but using it responsibly, I think is also a very key part.
I think that's an excellent piece to end on. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for taking time out of your incredibly busy days. I really appreciate it, and have a great CES 2018.
Thank you for listening to CES Tech Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can get more information on the CES show at ces.tech. Our show is produced by Tina Anthony. John Lindsay is our sound engineer. And me, I'm Jeff Joseph.